This is MichMash, a weekly conversation where we try to unjumble an important and sometimes under-the-radar statewide story that affects you. I'm Cheyna Roth.
And I'm Alethia Kasben. Cheyna, when was the last time you returned your cans and bottles for a deposit?
Okay, before I answer this, I want to stress that I do put all my recyclables in the recycling, but I haven't taken any in to get my 10 cents a bottle since probably before COVID. I think I really stopped once COVID hit and I just never went back. But I put them in the recycling. Doesn't that still count?
No judgment from me. I have not returned bottles since way before COVID because I have passed that task along to my husband, who, does that. And I have disliked it for a very long time. In fact, Cheyna, back in college, we let our cans and bottles collect for so long that by the time we returned them, we had enough to buy a keg, which was actually over Easter weekend. So it feels important that I tell you about that right now on the radio for all to hear. But still,
That's impressive.
It is. And it is good that you recycle your cans and bottles that you could return for a deposit. It would be better if we all return them for their deposit, though, because it ensures that they're reused more efficiently, which Conan Smith from the Michigan Environmental Council told me this week when I asked him this very question.
On average, if you take your tin can and you put it in the recycling, that tin can is going to become some other aluminum product, maybe someday, somewhere. If you take that same can and you return it for your 10 cents, it's going to become a tin can 6 times every year. It's just going to do that same loop over and over and over. So it's not bad to put it in your recycling. So I don't want to discourage people from doing that. I would rather encourage them to get it into that highest best use system, which is what the bottle bill provides us.
So Michigan's deposit system has been around since 1976, a long time, and it hasn't really changed much since then. And Alethia, we are not alone among those who don't return all of their cans and bottles for deposit, especially since COVID. The redemption rate has gone way down. The Environmental Council wants to revamp the bottle bill in an effort to make it easier to return containers for a deposit and bring those rates back up.
That's right, but this was a citizen-initiated law way back in 1976, so to change it, voters need to approve a ballot proposal or a supermajority of the legislature needs to take action. The Environmental Council actually wants to try a novel approach where they ask a simple majority of the legislature to send a proposal to the ballot so they don't have to go through the signature collecting process.
Which is not something that we see very often. And as for the changes that they want, the proposal would expand containers that can be returned for a deposit to everything, including water bottles and sports drinks. It also envisions easier returning methods rather than putting your cans or bottles through a machine one by one.
Yes, envision sort of like having one bag that is weighted or dumping everything in and the machine just says, okay, we know that this was like 100 or whatever. But while environmental groups support the bottle bill and its expansion, retailers have long said the implementation falls to them without enough support. They have concerns about the return areas in grocery stores and the money that they have to spend to really run this program. So in general, they really do not support this expansion.
Right. So even getting the legislature to send a proposal to the ballot could be challenging. But the Michigan Environmental Council is prepared to collect signatures to get this on the ballot as well.
That's right. So there is real potential we will be debating an expansion of the state's bottle bill in the months ahead.
We're going to switch gears here, and after this short break, Alethia will be joined by Conan Smith from the Michigan Environmental Council to talk about everything recycling. Happy Earth Day, y'all. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to MichMash. I'm Alethia Kasben. Our guest this week is Conan Smith, the president and CEO of the Michigan Environmental Council. Conan, welcome to MichMash.
Hey, Alethia, it's so great to be here. I love this podcast, and it's a real honor to be a part of it.
Oh, well, thank you so much. So Earth Day is coming up. This will come out on Friday the 18th, and Earth Day is the 22nd, I believe. So I wanted to talk about recycling. The state, released a study relatively recently that showed Michiganders are throwing away just a bunch of stuff that could be worth like $500 million if
right?
recycled. What are your thoughts on that?
It's to me really interesting to look at not just Michigan, but across the globe, like how people are thinking about recycling, how people are implementing their recycling programs. Um, I get really excited by the economic opportunity from a more circular economy, but I know there are lots of challenges with that. Like, it is in some ways a waste product. So, or at least we have treated it as a waste product for a long time. So, changing our mindsets or culture about closing that loop and then building the systems underneath it that make that economically viable, but also like convenient for citizens. It's a complex challenge, but I get excited by things like that. It's a cool business problem.
So, what is your assessment of the recycling programs that are available across the state? Like most of us, have a recycling pickup, I think. Maybe we can start there. How many people have access to this, easily?
Yeah, if you live in an urbanized area, you probably have curbside pickup, but that is not the broad majority of citizens. In fact, communities, say like the city of Detroit, often offer curbside pickup on an ad hoc basis. Like you have to go in and sign up proactively for it. There are communities, I live in the city of Ann Arbor. We have universal curbside recycling. So, the truck comes by every week, just like it does for your trash. So it's highly variable between those folks who don't have it at all. If you live in a rural community, it's all on you to do your recycling. My mother lives in Salem Township, Michigan. She drives her recycling to the I was going to say BFI, but it's not. It's GFL now, to the GFL facility for recycling, right? But that's her responsibility. She's on one end of the spectrum. I'm on the other. I walk it out to my curb once a week, and off it goes.
So yeah, my parents live outside of Traverse City, and they too have, there is recycling, right? But they have to drive it out. But it's a lot more accessible than it was, a few years ago because now, it's at the gas station and sort of all over town. They have little drop off locations.
Yeah, I think what's really been interesting over the last several years, thanks to the Michigan Recycling Coalition predominantly, which is a nonprofit organization, one of our members at the Michigan Environmental Council, super proud of them. Um, and they sort of pull together the whole spectrum of the industry, right? So they have consumers and consumer advocates, but they also have manufacturers and they have recyclers all sitting around the table thinking about how do we make this system really work. They led a very intense and long campaign to amend our recycling laws a couple of years ago. And we're just in the initial stages of that solid waste planning process. So we'll see an ongoing acceleration over the coming years as Part 115 reforms start to get implemented at the local level. You're probably already starting to feel that in your community.
So this recycling study also found that we, are just throwing away a bunch of food that could be composted, right? And I think, when I talk to people, we often discuss food waste and how much I think everyone wants to reduce it, right? What is access to composting programs look like? Like if recycling is highly variable, I imagine composting, even fewer of us have access to that.
Yeah, like composting accessibility is abysmal right now. It is an area where we as a people, we as a state, we as local governments could really be thinking about the whole process differently. From very simple composting, like on your kitchen counter, all the way up to the industrial scale recycling, and or not recycling, excuse me, composting. It, Composting has a whole set of similar challenges to the recycling world that we're accustomed to, right? Certain products are compostable in certain ways, others are not. So, for example, in some communities, you can take your greasy pizza box and you can put it in the compost. You can put your chicken bones in the compost, but you can't do that on your kitchen counter. You can't do that in your backyard, right? So there's a whole nother system for compost that's really got to be teed up and supported. One of the things that I have been just genuinely excited about. There's a nonprofit called Detroit Dirt, and they encourage and educate people about composting. But they also work with restaurants to collect food waste from at that larger scale, and then they have a community of people who compost it and turn it into topsoil, and then they bag that topsoil and they sell it, right? So they're creating their own closed loop economic system with our food waste. First and foremost, you should stop doing what I do, which is I over purchase things that are compostable, and I look in my refrigerator and there's a banana or something, well, not my refrigerator, but there's a piece of fruit that's been around too long. I just shouldn't have bought that in the first place if I wasn't going to eat it. That's job one,
Mm-hmm.
first. We don't really reuse food so much, right? But then think about where it's going to go at the end. Your kitchen counter composting is actually pretty fantastic. It's limited in what you can do, right? But it's accessible to just about everybody. And certainly in your backyard, small compost setup there, you can pop online and learn how to do that and turn your compost. You can't put, some of your more heavy, like you can't put your bones and things like that in your backyard compost. And then if you've got industrial or municipal compost, like you can do so much there. So there's lots of opportunity to engage in that space still.
For sure. And I think, people would like to try to feel better about their food waste, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing I saw in this study was something about vape pens. So for better or worse, people, like to vape, whether it's nicotine or cannabis. And I've been reading a lot about what happens like to these pens afterwards, right? Is this, a problem?
Oh yeah, it's a huge problem, and So I want to put the vape pens into a broader category of really difficult to recycle products. They're increasingly small and increasingly complex. They're difficult to collect because of their size and because of the way people use them. So in that use section, you think about a vape canister, and it's a one and done, and what are you gonna do with it? Toss it in the trash. A lot of people drop them on the street, which is terrible. But if you walk around in some cities on a Friday night or a Saturday night, what you'll see is vape canisters and little nips, the like 1.5 ounce liquor bottles, right? That
Mm-hmm.
someone's going into a concert and they, snuck a free drink in, or a low cost drink in.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a size problem, right? It's difficult to collect and recycle things that are that small. Sometimes the systems aren't built for it. And then there's a technology challenge too. Like, what do you do with these things that have complex pieces, some of which are more recyclable than others? So that's a challenge in and of itself, just because of its complexity. What I think environmentalists like myself argue is the creation of that waste product is in part the responsibility of the manufacturer. And so there's a policy we call extended producer responsibility, which means if you create it, you also have to have some means by which you manage that waste at its end of life. And in some industries, that's paying for the end product to be recaptured. Like in some places, you can bring your mattress back to the mattress store, right? I got a new mattress. What I do with my old one, they'll take the old one and cross our fingers, they deconstruct it and turn it into new mattresses, right? The Michigan bottle bill is an example of extended producer responsibility. The Coke and Pepsi and beer manufacturers, bottlers, distributors take responsibility for that end product along with the citizens, and they make sure that it gets recycled over and over and over again. We need more of that EPR, that more of that extended producer responsibility across more industries and more products, in order to make sure that the people who are smartest about manufacturing are also putting all that energy and attention into recovery and reuse.
So the state is aiming to get to a 30% recycling rate by 2029, I believe. Are we on track to meet that goal?
I couldn't answer that question about being on track yet because those Part 115 reforms are so recent, right? So
Mm-hmm.
have we laid the ground? Absolutely. Is the opportunity there? You betcha. The challenge is going to become is around the investment necessary for the ramp up to get to that level of recycling. Some of that's going to be on individual communities. Some of that's going to be on the state, and of course, a lot of it's on the citizenry themselves. One of the challenges that we face in recycling is sometimes even when the systems exist, um, they aren't well utilized by the citizens. So there also needs to be some education that happens about like the value of recycling, the importance of it for our environment and our economy. So there's a lot of moving parts that have got to come together for us to hit that target. I think we can do it, and I think we have built the right foundation to do it. So it's just all of us plugging away now for the next few years.
So how do you think the average citizen could be better at recycling?
Well, education's a huge part of it, right? Like when the movement for recycling was in its naissance, the products weren't that complex, right? You had paper, you had cardboard, you had aluminum cans. Today, even your aluminum can is a complex product. Sometimes it may have a plastic liner on the inside of it. Um, it's For the consumer, it becomes increasingly difficult to know, like, what do I do with this product? So, one, citizens can educate themselves about the opportunities that they have in their communities and really focus their attention on those, making sure that the products that are easily recyclable, that they're participating in that waste stream, right? Um, so, in my town, we have what's called single stream recycling. So it's one bin and we dump all our recyclables in it. That is okay. But a lot of the things that people put in those bins aren't actually recyclable. And our Recycle Ann Arbor is the nonprofit that manages our recycling program and runs the trucks up and down the streets. They provide a guide for what can and cannot go in that bin, but not very many people are reading it. And so they're putting stuff in there that contaminates that waste stream, creates extra labor on the back end for the staff at Recycle Ann Arbor. They got to sort out the wheat from the chaff, as it were. So I would say first and foremost, educate yourself about the systems that are available to you and focus your energy and attention on the recycling that is most easily accessible, convenient, and clear to you. So
Yeah, I think a couple of years ago when the legislature was talking about banning plastic bags, I knew plastic bags weren't allowed in recycling, right? But I was surprised to hear about how much of an issue it causes when plastic bags go in the recycling and hold up the whole line. And
yeah,
then all of a sudden, you're having these huge issues when you're just trying to move the recycling through.
Alethia, one of the things I love about that statute was so I was a county commissioner in Washington, and we passed the state's first ban of plastic bags via ordinance. And immediately the legislature jumped in and banned our ability to ban. They were just like, no. And,
yes, I remember that well.
We didn't get to have a conversation about it, but you're absolutely right. Like these plastic bags in our recycling system, they jam up the sorting machines, and that can be $100,000 a pop to clean up that mess and get the machine functional again, right? So that's a burden that that waste is putting on everybody, and there are really fantastic alternatives to it. Start with paper bags, right? Like if you just want the convenience of not bringing your own bag into the store, and like, hey, use paper. We did that for a very long time. We know that this is recyclable and we have a system for it. But also, man, I have this cute little, I have like 40 of these because my mom, whom I love, is crazy about them. They're little pocket bags, right? Like they shrink down to about the size of your fist. Like you stuff them all in there, and they become the size of a grocery bag when you unpack them. And, you put one or two of those in your car and you never have to use a plastic bag again. There are lots of easy ways to avoid contaminating our recycling stream and using petroleum-based product when we don't need to. Apologies, I started pontificating.
We could do a whole episode on bags, I think. But we won't. I want to move on to the bottle bill.
Great.
Okay, so Your organization wants the legislature to help change, the state's bottle deposit laws. So what are you asking for here?
So Michigan's bottle bill, created back in the 1970s by citizen initiative. So there are really only two ways to amend the bottle bill. One, you can get a 3/4 vote of both chambers of the legislature. That's a real heavy lift. I mean, uh, I love every lawmaker who's ever been elected to any office at any time. And I know that there are always reasons to disagree when you get to the Capitol. So getting 3/4 vote is really tough to do, especially if you want to do something substantive. The other pathway is going back to the people themselves and asking them to do an amendment. If you're going to do that, if you're going to go to the expense, the millions of dollars of collecting signatures, the millions of dollars of running a statewide campaign, it better not be a small fix, right? It ought to be a fix that's worth the time and the effort. So knowing that, we started thinking about, what does a modern bottle bill really look like? How is it better than the 1970s? Two things come to mind immediately. One, back in the 70s, we really just had glass and aluminum. There just weren't that many plastic bottles back then. Today, we've got plastic water bottles, we've got plastic Coke bottles, we've got Gatorade in plastic bottles, we've got juice in plastic bottles. We have a proliferation of beverages that aren't covered under that original act. So job one for us is expanding the coverage of that act. Currently, only about 57% of the containers in Michigan are covered by the bottle bill. So all those ones I just mentioned, they're, cross our fingers, they're getting into a recycling system, but they're just as likely to land in a landfill or worse. So let's expand this very functional, very popular system to capture more of that material. The second thing is, no surprise here, the availability of technology is a little bit different in 2025 than it was in 1976. And so we know that we can make it more convenient for consumers to do this. There are models all across the country that involve, for example, instead of putting your cans in one at a time into a machine, you can, in Oregon, drop off a bag full of cans that you scan the barcode on. Tomra, the company that builds those machines that you put the can in, they have a machine where you can pour a bag of cans into the front of it. It takes 20 seconds and you're done. To get your cans into that system and get your 20 seconds might be an exaggeration. Maybe it's 2 minutes. It's a very fast system compared to what we're doing now. We need to invest in that technology. We need the tools to make that technology available to retailers across the state. And then there are innovations that Michigan should be experimenting with and pushing forward. Like, how many people would love to have, if they have curbside recycling already, curbside bottle return? So can I have another can? It's purple or whatever, I don't know, that my 10-cent deposit ones go in. They get dumped into a big truck that counts them, and the money shows up in my account somewhere. We can build those systems now because we have that kind of technology that we didn't have in the 70s. But in order to access all of that, right now we're stuck with a 1976 law that has a very difficult path for reform. So it hasn't happened yet, which is why we want to push the legislature and our allies to do real modernization. So two things, just shorthand: cover more containers, make it easier for citizens to participate.
On making it easier, I think especially since COVID, we have seen just more and more people just recycle, I think, in their curbside, their containers that have deposit. People don't want to go and put them one at a time through those machines. Sometimes it's not the greatest place to be, right? It's like sticky and smelly and hot. So is there anything inherently wrong with just recycling your aluminum cans in with your other recycling?
Yeah. So, oh man, that's such an interesting way to put the question. There's nothing inherently wrong with it, but like we do with so many things, we talk about like what's the highest and best use or opportunity. So the worst thing you can do, right, is litter it. Throw it into the environment, into a lake, a stream, a ditch, or whatever. Like, please don't do that. If you're doing that now, talk to me. There's other options. So that's the bottom end of it. Then sometimes people put it in the trash. That's marginally better. It gets to a landfill, so it's at least contained in a single space and not proliferating through the environment. Next up the chain is just recycling. Now, when you put your bottle or can into the recycling stream, it mixes with a whole bunch of other recyclable materials. So imagine if you've got your recycling paper and someone puts a glass bottle of Coke in there and the bottle breaks, and now you've got glass mixed in with your paper. That's what we call like a dirty recycling stream. The sort of golden prize is the cleanest recycling stream possible. And that's what a closed loop system provides. So the bottle bill and the way that it has been developed by manufacturers, distributors, retailers over the last 50 years, it's very efficient, very effective at separating out that material and getting it back into the system. On average, if you take your tin can and you put it in the recycling, that tin can is going to become some other aluminum product, maybe someday, somewhere. If you take that same can and you return it for your 10 cents, it's going to become a tin can 6 times every year. It's just going to do that same loop over and over and over. So it is, like I say, a very, very efficient, very effective system. It reduces the need for additional materials development through mining, for example, or through oil drilling, where we get our plastics. So great system, and so it's not bad to put it in your recycling. So I don't want to discourage people from doing that. I would rather encourage them to get it into that highest, best use system, which is what the bottle bill provides us.
So, it'll be difficult to get the legislature to take action on this, right? Just because of the number of people who would have to vote on this. Do you think you will have to go out and collect signatures? And is that something, your organization is willing to lead? What are the conversations there?
Yeah, so here's Gongwer listeners will probably love this because it's the wonky part of it, right?
I've been waiting to ask this question.
We're trying innovation that's never been done before. We're asking the legislature by 50% plus one vote, which is much more achievable, to put the question on the ballot for the citizens. There is some question about whether this is doable or possible. Some very intelligent folks on both sides have said, no, absolutely. The Constitution says that this is how you get it. It has to be voted on by the people or by 3/4 of the legislature. If it's half the legislature and then the people, that counts. Some other people are saying, no, like you would even have to have 3/4 vote of the legislature for them to put it on the ballot. It's an interesting sort of legal and policy challenge. Right now, we're focused on working with stakeholders across the industry, across the spectrum, to design a really good modernized bottle bill proposal in hopes that we can generate that majority of the legislature and get them to put it on the ballot. If we get challenged and we have to test that theory in court, so be it. We're prepared to do that. We're also, because time in our from our perspective, time is short. We are also prepared to go collect those signatures. So, don't be surprised if you get a mailer or someone knocks on your door and says, "Hey, it's time for a better bottle bill."
All right, Conan. Well, thank you so much for joining me today on MichMash.
This was awesome. I am so grateful for the invitation. I had a lot of fun. This is the only topic I'm articulate on, so I'm sorry that I won't ever be back. But